Sammy wanted to be a comedian ever since he saw the greats on TV, but the journey so far hasn't been all laughs. Born with facial palsy, he stood out for his crooked smile and had a hard time learning to love himself. Growing up around a drug-addicted brother, Sammy learned early on how unpredictable life can be. And although he's never fallen prey to addiction himself, it still loomed around him, with multiple friends and mentors swept up in its grip. After 7 years in the game, it all came to a crashing halt in 2018 when Sammy had a heart attack mid-show. He walked away unsure if he'd ever come back, but the stage was never far from his mind. Now he's stepping back into the spotlight on a national tour, not to prove he can, but because it's who he is. This is Sammy Petersen. Welcome to Youngblood, the volunteer video podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. I'm your host, Cal McPherson, and this is a platform for young men and their loved ones to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the #1 killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself. Sammy, the Daily Mail called you disabled in a recent article. What did you make of that article?
So funny that you say that, because today I'm working on a PowerPoint presentation about that article. I'm putting together a PowerPoint presentation for a showcase in the Adelaide Fringe this week, and it's going to be basically all about that article. It was kind of a shock to me that when I saw it. A friend sent it to me. I'm not a subscriber of the Daily Mail, but I got an email that came through that just said you've been labelled disabled by the Daily Mail. And it was basically a sketch that I did with the great Georgia Love, and we were just doing a sketch together. They're obsessed with her, and so it was just a sketch where I was meant to play a creepy guy. That was, typecast. I was just playing a creepy guy.
Nailed it.
Yeah, nailed the brief. I was just playing a creepy guy, and all I was meant to do was turn around. It was a sketch where it was basically Georgia saying, oh, you get a drink from a guy, and then you go, oh, and the guy. And it was me turning around, and I was meant to be looking really gross. That was all the sketch was. And then I got the article that came through that said, Georgia Love slams disabled comedian. And I was like, well, thank you for calling me a comedian. But
And what do you mean by slams?
yeah, slammed. I was like, I don't know if she slammed a comedian, but I found it was quite hard to... I think when I grew up, I was always the one that made the joke first before someone else could. So a lot of my humour for a very long time, until I started doing stand-up again after taking such a long break, I was very, very mean to myself, and I was always, before the bully says anything, I'll talk about my facial palsy before anyone says anything.
Great defensive tactic.
Great defensive tactic, and it makes you feel better about yourself until you do it on stage every night and people laugh at you, and then you go, oh, it must be true, because that's a great tell of
that
what's true.
Self-deprecation from a young age really prepares you for a career in comedy, though,
absolutely, and doing that every night and getting a laugh means that the people that are laughing think it's true. That's why observational humour works. And then you're saying something every night and going, oh, when are you going to talk about your effed face, is what I used to open with. And people would laugh, and I go, oh, I guess I do need to talk about my effed face. Like, it was always that. And so when you see something like the Daily Mail article, I was taken aback. I thought it was really funny. But then, as when you're alone at night and you've had a glass of wine, and you start to think,
fuck the Daily Mail.
Fuck the Daily Mail. Yeah, fuck the Daily Mail. But also, it is such an interesting thing when from someone else's perspective. I think the fact that they assumed I was disabled in the sketch, it had nothing to do with the sketch, but they just labelled me disabled in that, and so they were actually the ones that were calling me disabled. No one else had, but they had assumed that Georgia was making some sort of reference to me being someone with a disability, or mocking someone with a disability, which was never my intent, but it was definitely a funny thing that, and sometimes friends do send you things that you're like, I don't know why you've decided to send me this Daily Mail article. It really threw a spanner in the works that day for me.
What's it done for your level of fame, though?
Nothing. I just don't think.
Have you been walking down the streets of Adelaide and people going, "Hey, you're that disabled guy"?
Yeah. It's not. I mean, nothing. I just don't think there's a lot of crossover between the Daily Mail and the people that want to come and watch my comedy. I don't think it has done anything for it. I think it's probably a good thing because if you ever read the comments on the Daily Mail, they're quite vicious.
And they're typically paid for articles as well. And I don't know, you're probably your budget probably doesn't allow for that.
That's
at
right.
this point.
Not in my marketing.
But it's something to hold in reserve, I suppose, for the future.
Yeah.
What is it like living with facial palsy?
I mean, it's not something that I really notice about myself now.
Because you've had it since birth.
I've had it since birth. So the doctors pressed the forceps a little bit too tight on my face when I was born, and it damaged the nerves in half my face. And so I've always had it, and I think I was really self-conscious when I was probably a teenager. Like, that was something that I remember being self-conscious about because, of course, you are. Like, you're so worried about your image, and you're worried about what other people are thinking about you, and you always think it's the first thing that people notice.
Did you get much shit for it?
A bit, yeah. In school I did. There were certain bullies that would be really mean about it and just say things about it, or I remember one time someone overheard someone talking actually about me, and they were saying, Sammy, he's the guy that talks out the side of his face. And it was like, that would mean the ear, I imagine, but don't talk out of my ear. But it was something that was so prevalent for me, and I felt like everyone was thinking that as soon as they met me. I felt that everyone was looking at my mouth when they met me. And it turns out that really no one is. And when I started to do comedy, I thought that I had to reference it straight away. And when I started to do the show that I'm doing now, my director, the great Marique Hardy, just said to me, "You don't need to open with that. That can be
just
something
make
you
it the
talk
name
about.
of your show.
Make it the name of your show, which is a story in
the
itself."
opener's opener.
Yeah, that's right. Which was also a Daily Mail sort of situation. The title of the show is kind of another run-in that I had with a publisher about my smile.
What about socially? Have you always thought that you need to start conversations with new people by making note of?
Yeah, I did. Especially going on dates and things. I remember being very, very aware of it. I mean, on a date, it's like you're putting your best foot forward. You're trying to get ahead of everything. And I remember sometimes if I'd laugh on a date when meeting someone, I would always look down and I'd always kind of cover my mouth, which is such an insane thing to do because I don't know how I would get away with that forever. Like, it was such a weird thing to go, I'm going to do this and maybe she'll never notice. Like, if we had a long history together, I don't know how I would ever get away with that, but it was very, very much something that I thought that I had to bring up first, and almost as I remember messaging someone once, but going on a date, messaging them before we even met up, just going, "Just so you know, I've got facial palsy," and she was like, "Oh, okay." Like, I don't know if that was going to be a shock or a turn off, because imagine if she said, "I'm not coming anymore."
Could have happened.
It could have happened, but that would have been even worse. Like, that would have been such a thing. I remember one time a girl did say that, I remember on a date, she was like, "It's so weird, I only usually date attractive guys." And I was like, "Oh, wow, what a thing." And she did say later in the night, she was like, "Oh, I thought you were lying about, I thought you were trying to hide your facial palsy," which I thought was a very
I've been trying really hard all this time.
Yeah, that's right. And something that I definitely was doing on the date by kind of covering my smile every time I laughed.
How would people generally react? Like, when you brought it up, would they say, "Oh, thanks for saying something because I was dying to make fun of you," or something?
Yeah, I wanted to really roast you. No one's ever really said anything about it. It's never been something that people I've met. I remember one time a friend years and years ago just said to me, I remember when I kind of stopped thinking about it for the first time when I was maybe 27 years old or something. So 6 years ago, I remember a friend just saying to me, "I've never ever thought of you as having facial palsy. I've always just thought you've had a quirky smile." And that kind of reframed it for me. I was like, "Oh yeah, it is just a quirky smile." And I kind of think that saying the word disabled kind of defines you by what you can and cannot do in a lot of ways. And so I've always, I guess the word disabled, I've never thought
identify with that.
I don't identify with that at all. And I think the Daily Mail thing was they went, "That's you," and I was like, I think you're a shit newspaper.
The headline, they just didn't want to fit in quirky smile.
That's right,
it's just
quirky
too long.
smile. Yeah, in brackets, he's got a lovely smile. Actually, that's what they should have said.
But even the comments, you got quite a lot of, and you're on your Instagram, quite a lot of positive feedback of people saying how much they love your smile.
Yeah, which is a lovely thing to hear.
But then you get lots of comments of people saying how shit your comedy is.
That's right.
Including that person who writes into your podcast to tell you how much.
That's right, hateful Nicole. The comedian's always in quotation marks.
I guess it's a subjective.
That's right.
Career,
that's right.
How have you been able to get over that though? Like, why at 27 did you suddenly let go of it and say, like, this is my face, I'm all good with it? Like, how did you get to that point?
I think just having it my whole life, making jokes about it for so long, and I think after a while you kind of have to think about when do you start to love everything about yourself. Like, it's a very hard thing to do, to go, you know, to love every part of yourself, and it took a long time to actually go, it really doesn't matter, and if it doesn't matter to someone else, I don't really know why it would matter to me so much. It's something that I always wanted. Like, I remember always wanting to have a full smile. That was always something that I wanted, but at some point you have to kind of go, but that's never going to happen.
And this is the only way that you know yourself. This is how you've been your whole life. So if you could even it up now, would you do it?
I don't think I would have done comedy if I didn't have a slanted smile. I really don't think that I would have gone down this path. Like, I feel like that I would have done something in maybe arts or something, but who knows? Like, it's like
Do you think that would have been enough to make you a different person?
I think so. Yeah. Because I kind of always... Remember my mum said that when she found out that I was like, the doctors have pressed the forceps too tight.
Like, what the fuck, doctors?
I know. I know. But they were...
No lawsuit back then?
No lawsuit back then, apparently. But she said, she was like, she cried for like 3 days thinking about how my life would be really different. It's not a nice thing to hear about your mum. That she cried for 3 days.
But it makes sense that she cried because you ended up being a comedian, which is the worst outcome.
Yeah, the sad clown. But she said that she, cried for a few days, and I was like, oh, well, that affected her so much, and her thinking in the future and going, oh, he would have been so affected by his smile forever. That was quite a hard thing to hear, that she kind of knew right from the start that it wouldn't be the easiest life. And she got me really into, like, there's a great comedian called Wendy Harmer who was born with a cleft palate, and her mum, I think her dad used to just force her on stage all the time to get up in front of a crowd, and Wendy Harmer kind of talks about how she found that kind of cruel at the time, because it was like, it was kind of like the freak show, wheel out the kid. But for my mum, she did the same with me, and
did she make you go on stage?
Yeah. She made me. She was a drama teacher.
Oh,
so
mine was a drama teacher.
Oh, really?
Too.
Yeah. So I think in that way they kind of force you to.
And didn't your dad work at your school?
Yeah.
My dad worked at my
school. Oh, really?
Yeah.
So your mum was a drama teacher?
My mum was a drama teacher, and my dad was my head of middle school.
Oh, that's so funny.
And an English teacher.
Yeah, right, yeah. No, so my dad was, they're both primary school. And
maybe I could have been a comedian, mate.
Yeah, I know. You just
Sliding
missed an
doors.
opportunity. I know. But so they're coming up to Adelaide today. Like, they're
cool.
coming to, come and see the show this weekend and everything. And they've always been very supportive in that way and kind of encouraged me to do it. But Mum was always trying to get me up in front of a crowd.
And were you all good with that in the beginning, or very afraid of getting up?
I think probably afraid at the start, like any kid would be kind of afraid to do that. Like, I certainly wasn't born. I didn't want to be an actor, and I didn't want to be, I didn't want to kind of be a front-facing person, but I really liked comedy. Like, I really
from
liked
a young
watching
age.
Yeah, I really loved watching comedians.
Why?
It was a way to make my mum happy. Like, it was really, I wanted to make her laugh. She was I remember her always being a bit sad, and my brother was a lot of trouble growing up, and I always wanted to please my mum and make my mum happy, and I'd always try and make her laugh, and it just felt nicer.
Was it hard to make her laugh?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've got a poster of my show this year, which is me about...
She was like, Sammy, you're not funny.
You're not funny. Yeah, probably. I was about 6 years old, and I've got a little microphone, and I'm actually performing for her and doing like a little comedy routine that I
Wow, okay.
had
So we're
thought of.
talking, this was decided from a very
When I was like,
early age.
6 years old, that I wanted to do something in that world. But making people laugh is like, a room full of people laugh who are all strangers. It is the nicest feeling. Like it is an addictive and really nice feeling.
And not easy to do.
Not easy to do.
Not like bombing. Not the nicest.
Oh no, yeah, and bombing is the easiest thing to do, really.
Yeah.
But it's a really nice feeling, and the people around you all laughing is such a addictive feeling. And so I think I just always love that, and always hearing laughter, because it means people are happy. It was always a really nice thing to know that there wasn't something tense happening all around you. It was like a really nice moment where people are actually
So
happy.
did you feel a bit of that tension as a kid from your mum, and that was something you wanted to undo or alleviate?
Yeah, alleviate that and try and make her happy, and try and, but I'd be like falling over to make her laugh, like, slapstick vibes from a young age as well. So it was like trying anything to make anyone laugh. And I remember going to great lengths to do that, like knocking my head on stuff and just trying to anything to make people laugh, because I thought...
So how was your report card then at school?
Distracting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like really distracting kid. I was not academic at all. Like
Were you the class clown on purpose?
I think I was. Yeah. When I look back on it, I think I definitely was the class clown, and it would be like whoopee cushions or anything really to
Bottom
make
of the
people
barrel
laugh.
type stuff.
Bottom of the barrel. Yeah. Like hitting like slapstick and whoopee, like anything that would make people laugh.
Did that work though for your status or your bully
It did.
prevention?
Yeah. It did in high school. Like it really, I think being the funny kid in high school, and you're very, big fish, small pond in a small place. And then when you move to Melbourne, it's like, you become...
They've got more acts.
They've got way more acts, way more fish in that pond. And it's a much harder thing when you kind of live the life of someone going, oh, I'm the funniest person here. And then very quickly, even right now when we're recording this at the Adelaide Fringe Festival, and there's like 1,000 acts. And you're like, it is a miracle that anyone's coming to see me.
Yeah, but at least 36 people are on a good
That's
night.
right. Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah. That's
it's a big
true.
wide world out there.
Yeah.
On Will Anderson's podcast, you said that nothing could offend you these days. Mm-hmm. In a world that's so easily offended,
Yep.
how dare you be so indifferent?
It's disgusting, isn't it? It's disgusting from me. People get so offended at everything. And
It's just exhausting.
It's
isn't it?
exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. And so I've always...
You can't get much done because you just got to be pissed
outraged
off
and commenting on things.
all day, yeah.
Like even looking at because I'm doing this PowerPoint presentation about the Daily Mail article, even like I've been screenshotting the comments.
Which is great, like great content. Thank you,
Oh,
Daily Mail.
thank
You
you
make
so
a whole
much. It's
show
another
out of
10
that.
minutes. Yeah. But it's like even screenshotting the comments, and there's people commenting, I don't know why people are commenting on this, waste of time and everything. It's like, you're
You just
doing
did it.
that.
Yeah.
You're the one commenting, and people commenting under that going, you're a waste of space, and then someone gets upset about that, and then there's like all these comments, people firing off in the comments, getting angry at each other. I just find it all so exhausting. Like there's stuff I like, there's stuff I don't like, but I don't actively seek out or comment on things that I don't like. I think that's the difference where you go, I'm not offended by anything, but there's comedy and stuff that I don't seek out because I know punching down isn't my humour, and so when I see that sort of stuff, I'm like, I'm not offended by it, but I'd just kind of rather not watch it, which I think is the outrage culture where you go, I'm not upset, I'm not angry at it, I just don't want to watch it.
But I think it sets up a really nice environment for comedians, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
comedy is just thriving in recent years.
Yeah.
And I think off the back of the cancel, people even get cancelled anymore. I feel like that's over. I don't know if you can still get cancelled. It's pretty hard to get cancelled now.
Yeah.
But like that really offended atmosphere is a perfect setup for comedy as well. Because I feel like 90% of us who have jobs or are concerned about not upsetting anyone, we think what we think, but most people aren't going to say it. And so we love to come to comedy because then you say it and we laugh.
Yeah.
We don't get in trouble for it.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
actually in amazing time to be a comedian, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, they do say the cancel culture thing, like that lots of comedians are cancelled, but then they're selling out arenas everywhere.
So who's cancelling them?
Yeah,
Someone.
yeah,
It's not very
exactly.
effective.
No, it's not effective if you can still perform in massive arenas. Yeah.
But the closer you are to World War III, I feel like the funnier
Yeah.
things are, possibly.
Yeah, yeah. And there are people that do it so well. I think in the hands of someone who's really good at talking about things where you understand the context of what they're actually talking about, it is really funny, because you go, I know that they don't mean that, but it is really dark and it's going in really dark territory.
Well, some people say, I know you don't mean that. Other people don't understand what comedy is and the fact that you don't actually mean
yeah, exactly.
And get very upset by it.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned your brother before. How did having a brother who was an addict growing up impact you?
Well, I mean, it just changed everything. Like he was, so when I was probably about 14, he started smoking weed, and that had a chemical imbalance in his brain, and then he started just taking everything. Like it certainly wasn't weed that ended up with him behaving in that way.
The old gateway drug.
It was a gateway drug, and he did have some sort of imbalance to it and became quite violent, and I had a lot of restraining orders on him growing up, and probably when I was about 14, 15, that's when things really started to change. And so I just wanted...
So how many years were you living there together where he was...
When he was really violent?
Yeah.
Probably three or 4 years. Yeah, so he was only a year older than me, so...
Would he be violent to you?
Yeah. And so that's when I kind of started to have the restraining orders, and mum and dad did as well, and then it was just any distraction would do. Like the restraining orders meant that he'd be, you know, had to be 400 meters away from me. So he'd measure out 400 meters and he'd go and sit, you know, 400 meters away. Like it was very much like very calculated. He knew what he was doing, and he knew how to get in your head as well. He's someone that's very good at pushing people's buttons, and he knows what to say to try and hurt people. And you know, one of my big things is, you know, in my show I kind of talk about hurting people. That's what they always say, but something they don't say is they don't have to. Like, you actually don't have to. If you've been hurt, you can kind of stop the cycle at some point if you're equipped to do that. Not everyone is equipped to do that. It's going to
be one or the other, isn't it?
Yeah. And he just kept lashing out, and that meant that I couldn't have friends around. It meant that I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do, and I just looked for any distraction. And that was, you know, comedy.
And what about your anxiety, your well-founded paranoia?
Yeah, well, yeah, that was another thing. It was like I was anxious anytime I heard a door slam. I was anxious about leaving my parents at home in case he came back. I was worried about everything. I was just a really anxious kid. And when I moved to Melbourne, I was like, the world was it felt really scary. And in a way, the world is still very scary, but it felt like I had to just find my own family in Melbourne, and that was the comedy world, where there was still some pretty addictive personalities in comedy as well.
You're like, I want to get away from addiction.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go into comedy.
Go into stand-up comedy. It was a weird choice from me, but it was very much like you find what you know, and I was certainly finding safety in being around addicts and being around people that I found a similarity with, or I understood them a bit more. But anytime I heard like a door slam, or I heard like any sort of loud sound, I'd get really tense. And even walking past like someone who had, you know, some sort of schizophrenia or drug-induced psychosis or whatever it was, I would get really tense, and I still do. Like if there's someone who starts shouting on the street or anything, and I know a lot of people would obviously get frightened by that, but I kind of tense up a little bit, and I still have that factor about me. I have a lot of empathy for people that have ended up in a position like that, but it's almost a little bit, I do tense up a little bit every time.
And his targeting you, was that psychosis? I mean, you're his brother, you're not his dealer, so why was he coming after you?
Yeah, allegedly. I think I think that I was challenging him on things probably, and sticking up for my parents, or trying to help my parents, or trying to be, I don't know, I was just, we were very different people. You know, I've never touched a drug in my life, but I and that was because of him. But he was definitely trying to, I don't know, he's trying to rattle me. And I think that's kind of his personality, that he always tried to rattle me and scare me. And there was a lot going on with him, and I don't really understand the reasoning behind it, but he was certainly always angry at me, and then would be sickly sweet the next day.
Okay.
And it was very much a...
And that's not a relationship that has ever been repaired?
No, not at all. No. Like, it was a hard relationship to have, and then it's just been impossible to get it back. There's been periods where we've tried, and we've met up and we've had chats, and I've seen him, but he goes through stages of being good and then really bad again, and then good and then really, you know, it's a very hard thing to be consistent.
To have people in your life when they're up and down like that.
Yeah. And it's emotionally exhausting. Like, you know, I've got friends that were just always like, anytime he'd be good, I'd go and see him, or I'd go and try and help, or I'd go and do something. And then when you get to a certain age, you kind of start to think about your own life and your own friends. And I'm 33 now, and I was like, at some point I was just like, well, I've got to start thinking about my own life a little bit more, and my career and the things that I wanted to do as well.
And then you've met other addicts along the road and become very close with them at certain times in your life. Talk a bit about those relationships.
Well, so when I started doing comedy, my mentor was Greg Fleet. So he got me into doing stand-up for the first time. And I was 18 years old, and he was just someone that I hadn't seen yet perform, but my first stand-up gig that I ever saw in Melbourne, it was him, and I thought he was just the most brilliant person in the world. Fiona O'Loughlin was the same. Those two people that I was just like, thought were the best, because they were the best. You know, they were geniuses. They were the smartest, funniest people in every room, and it just didn't make sense that they were that good when they didn't necessarily put the work in. Like, a lot of their time was focused on the addiction, and the addiction was like another part of them. It was like their right arm. Like they were always focused on the addiction, and so it made everything else kind of impossible. Like they weren't writing material, they weren't doing it, they would just get up and they were naturally brilliant, where a lot of people have to work really hard. Like, I had to work really hard. Like, a lot of people work really hard and would never wish that they were in that position, but it's like hard to see a genius and you're like, oh, okay, you're actually a comic genius, which I think, you know, Fiona O'Loughlin and Greg Fleet were. And my relationship with them was very much, I see a lot of my brother in you. I understand the addiction, but they were the most brilliant people to be around, and addicts often are. Like, they're often the person that, like, I saw an old comedy friend last night who, you know, is like that. Like, they are the most interesting, funny person in the room, but they were definitely the drunkest person in the room last night. And after a while, that becomes a mess, and you have to remove yourself from that situation. And it took a long time for me to kind of realize that was going to be really destructive in my life.
And how much were you around them? Were you seeing them on a weekly basis? Were you like some sort of a sidekick type?
I was a
operator?
sidekick, yeah, but yeah, like a real shit sidekick. It would be like 4 times a week. Like, I'd be with Fiona a lot, like checking her into rehab or picking her up from a rant. Like, she'd you know, meet people on a train and end up at their house, you know, and I'd get a call in the middle of the night going, oh, she was not as fun as we thought she was going to be, and, you know, she's drunk in our living room. And I'd go and pick her up, and I'd go and pick Fleety up, and I'd go and...
And why would you offer so much constantly to go and do those things for those people?
Well, just because I loved them, and I was also huge. I loved their comedy. I loved everything about them, and I wanted them to get better. Like, I wanted them to be well again. I wanted them to not have the addiction. And I think especially with Fiona, I saw, you know, her 5 kids as well as wanting their mum back. And
did they want it to stop too?
Of course, yeah, of course. And I made a documentary about Fiona that I took over 3 years to make, and followed her, you know, every day for 3 years, and made this documentary about her. It was kind of like a love letter to her, really, to go, she was the best. And I hope one day she is again. And when you see someone like that, you're like, oh, it'd be amazing if they were that person that you remember when you were a kid watching. And certainly for me, I was watching her all the time and thought she was just the best. And you kind of work with someone hoping that you'll see like a glimmer of how great that person once was.
Would they confide in you about how they wanted it to end and be emotional and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Like really would go into details about how they always thought they were trying to destroy their career, or they always thought that there was a part of them that didn't want to do this and wanted to kind of walk away. And I think the path of destruction is sometimes, you know, the easiest one in someone's head, because you can go, I can do this myself. I can rip the Band-Aid off and take everyone down with me. And sometimes that feels like that is the easiest thing to do, rather than just walking away and getting a job, a proper job.
Oh, that's out of the question.
Yeah,
obviously, we're never going to do that. So knowing these addicts who had different roles to play in your life and had different addictions, but many of the same sort of similarities, how has that shaped your perspective on addiction generally?
I just understand it. Like, I just understand what massive toll it takes on people, I think. Like, you know, I see people who are addicts and I kind of understand what they're going through and why it is the only thing they can focus on. I think a lot of the time you hear people talk about addicts and they go, oh, they just need to get better, or they just need to do, you know, they just need to do this, they just need to do this, they just need to do this. And it's usually coming from people that you see that don't seem to understand it at all, don't know that, of course, they're going to, you know, shoot up before they're going to eat. Like, it is the first thing that they're going to do. The bottle of vodka in the morning is the first thing they're going to drink, and they're not thinking about anything else. They're thinking about how they're going to work their day around that. And so I've always kind of had that in the back of my mind, where it's like, oh, an addict isn't thinking like anyone else. It's the sole focus, and they will kind of do anything to get that hit. And then it's the next hit, and then it's the next hit, and it just keeps going. And so when I meet someone that is an addict, I'm coming from a place where I go, I understand that need and that want, but I've had to put things in place for myself where I'm like, I try not to get too close to someone, but I feel like, you know, I could easily be an addict like myself. I'm like pretty, you know, I feel like I've got a very addictive personality. So it's something that I always kind of have to have in the back of my mind, where I go, I think I've said it back on my mind a lot on this podcast so far, so I apologise for that. But it is something that I'm always like, I just need to know that it would be a slippery slope, I think, for me if I ever kind of opened up that.
Because you would have been around drugs plenty, obviously.
Oh my God, yeah, in the comedy world and the TV, like all of it. Like I've certainly been around drugs and in excess a lot. And I've seen some of the best people behave the worst. And it doesn't mean they're bad people, but they can, under the influence, can really do things to people. So
that sense is so ingrained in you that you're not even tempted to do drugs.
I mean, I drink. You know, like I like wine. Like, you know, that's the limit that I have. But I also, unless it's around someone that I really love and trust, I never go over a certain. I have a few, and that's it. I rarely have more than that. But for me, I just know in the back of my mind that if I already feel like that could be me, I'm like, I don't want to. Like a lot of the addicts I saw were a dire warning for me. Like it was like, oh, I don't want that to be me ever. So, you know, if I want to get up and swim tomorrow morning, I can't be out of my mind, and I want to get up tomorrow and be productive. And I work a lot, so I need to be able to do that. And if I was, you know, if I was out every night, and I think comedy has changed now, where I don't think people are, the rock stars that used to be around, there's not as many rock stars anymore. There's not as many people that take all the free drink tokens at the venue, and there's not as many that I can see anyway that are as destructive as people that came before them.
Do you drink even when you perform? Like, would you have a couple beers before you perform?
Not. I try not to before, but occasionally I will have one or two before. If it's a late show, probably I'll have like one or two while I wait, but never over two. I've never had anything more than two before I go on stage, and then don't drink on stage if I've already had something before, and then after I can kind of have something, but it's never over one or two after either.
Wow, dude, such a nerd.
Yeah, real square. I've got glasses, massive 4 eyes nerd, but I've just never done that, and it kind of scares me a little bit. I saw Judith Lucy from an early age in comedy being like, she will never drink before she goes on stage, and I remember someone saying that's why she's so good, and I was like, oh right, like, and I see people as well who are smashed before they go on stage, and they can be really good. I don't think I have that skill
If they're
set.
Scottish.
If they're Scottish, only if they're Scottish, that's right. But if someone yells out at me and I've had a few drinks, I'm not going to come back with the quickest thing in that moment.
You need 100% of your mental faculties.
Yeah. And it's terrifying. I'm standing in front of a room full of people that could turn at any point. Like it is like, it's a scary thing to do. Like anyway, like I get really nervous. So it's like, I've got a lot of social anxiety. So I'm like, well, me doing this is like a miracle that I'm even doing it. And then even before I go on stage, I'm like, oh, all my life choices.
It must have done wonders for your social anxiety though.
Yeah. Like in a way it has, because
I guess you wouldn't know who you'd be if you didn't do comedy. Right?
No, that's right. Yeah, and you know, every time, like I've just recently started doing this new show, and I many times went, why am I doing this? You know, like just before I'm about to go out and I can hear the crowd there. There's a part of me that goes, I could walk away right now. Every gig I have, I want to cancel. I've never had a gig that I haven't wanted to cancel. Yeah. My social anxiety is really bad.
What point at which do you go, oh, I'm glad I'm here?
When I'm on stage. That's the only time. And after. That's the only time. But even last night I wanted to cancel. I was like...
What's driving that? Do you get those thoughts in your head of self-doubt and you're actually shit and all those other shows were a fluke? And
Yeah. And I just think, what if I fuck it up so bad tonight that there's going to be nothing that I can come back from? What if I say the wrong thing? What if and I know I'm not going to, but I have this self-doubt in my head, and it's just like I think last year when I did this show for the first time, I didn't know how it was going to go. Like I walked on stage for the first time. It was the longest, doing an hour. I'd never been on stage for an hour ever by myself. I've done a lot of live podcasts and a lot of that sort of stuff, but I've done 15-minute sets for 7 years. I've never done over that. And so when you walk on stage and you're like, I'm here for 50 minutes. If it goes really badly, I'm here for 50 minutes.
Yeah, and imagine how the crowd feels.
Imagine how the crowd feels, sitting there for 50 minutes going, I don't like this. And I was so lucky that I had a support network around me at the first show. It was in Brisbane. And it sold out, people came, and I was like, okay, this is...
You'd paid every person.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's like when, you know, a rapper or something brings out a new album and they go and buy every album in the show. I was like, I just need to make it the best case scenario for me. But...
You must have bombed before, though. Everyone's bombed.
Oh my God, all the time.
Yeah.
Still.
Have you bombed with your hour show, though?
No, not in the hour show, because people are coming to see me, usually. I've had one or two people that seemed very confused by the show. You know, because
that's going to happen.
Of course. And it's like, I think it's a very funny show, but there are moments in it that are very, very, very vulnerable and very open, and those bits are the scary bits.
And what are they about?
So the show opens with me talking about having a heart attack on stage and waking up on stage. So that's how the show starts. And I did not want to start the show like that, because that is terrifying for an audience to hear. And because it's
only up from there.
Yeah. Is it going to happen now? What part of... Is he going to black out? What's going to happen? And my director, Marie Cardi, who I was like, at the start, I was like, I'm going to get a comedy person to do this, because I want to get a director who just knows comedy. And then I just kept thinking, Marie Cardi is the greatest writer in Australia. Like, in my opinion, the greatest writer, one of the funniest people, but also just a great storyteller. And I was like, it's more important for me to know that being comfortable in the silence is okay. And that's a huge thing for me, being comfortable in the silence. And the start of the show and the end of the show for me had to be silence. And they had to be uncomfortable for me. And I wanted to be on stage for 2 minutes without a laugh. And I wanted to end the show without a laugh. But that's a massive thing to do as someone whose first instinct is to make everything okay by making the first joke. From the age of 6, I've been doing that. And I've been wanting to make people laugh and wanting to have that response. And when you're out on stage for 2 minutes, you go, ah, shit, like, I'm not getting anything here. And if the first joke doesn't land, it's over. And Will Anderson came to my first show in Brisbane, and he sat there, and the only thing he said when I came off stage is he said, slow the fuck down at the start and sit in it. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And he goes, it's a great show, you just need to believe in the start. And then I did it in Sydney, and I started with a joke. I was just like, nah, I've just got to start with a joke. And then I stopped myself and went, I'm just going to start the show again. I did that. Because I went, because if you don't believe in it, everyone else can tell as well. And I was going so fast at the start. Got to commit. And I was going so fast at the start. And people would just not... People would know that I was struggling with the silence. So it starts like that. And not to give away the ending, but it goes into some pretty, I guess, darker things for me. Where
around the heart attack, or around your brother, or
around my obsession with addiction, and the fact that I kept giving my heart to people that didn't want it, and hurt people. And trying to kind of summarize that in a way. I also talk about, there's a big story in it, why the show is called Why the Long Face, was because I was approached by a book publisher to write a book called Why the Long Face, the story of a boy who's trying to make people laugh when he can't even smile himself. And that was a legitimate book title that someone pitched to me.
Except you can smile.
It can smile, yeah, technically. It actually doesn't make any sense at all. And
they were like, can you just cover your face?
Yeah, that's right. And Why the Long Face is also a horse joke.
Yeah.
So I'm not a horse. So the end of the show is also kind of summarizing why I didn't take that book deal and why it is so insulting. Like, why that was not a nice thing to say to someone that was really, really self-conscious. And I wanted to summarize that in a way where I don't have that, the tension release of a laugh. I was like, I don't want to end with something that will take away from what I've just been trying to do. Because it's a scary thing to be up there for that long. And if the show goes so quickly and it, I've tried to make it funny all the way through, but then I was like, at the end, I was like, well, if the show's 52 to 54 minutes, the last 2 minutes can be, I don't have to have any jokes in that. And that was the hardest thing, is going, this is my heart, this is everything, and thank you as well, which is nice.
Yeah, so no heckles during the start or the end, hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. But that's the thing as well, that my mum came to the first shows I did in Melbourne and heckled a lot, like a lot, and it was really like. The ending was meant to be the nicest ending in the world, and the first night, she spoke during the whole thing, and she did that at another Melbourne show and another Melbourne show. So I've had to have a word with her to say, can you not?
Yeah,
and you'll be there on Saturday where she'll be there, so you can tell me, you can tell her to shut up. Actually,
what are her heckles based on?
they're not necessarily heckles that she's not. Sometimes she's not talking. Sometimes she'll just go, oh, and then people will laugh because they know it's her, or she'll just kind of go, oh, Sammy, in a nice moment, and that kind of does take everyone out of it, because
so it's the nicest heckle you ever.
They're nice heckles, but it is. I remember a friend who came to see the show, a comedian, was like, I just wanted to stand up and punch her in the face, because they were just so angry that she kind of spoke in the last.
Please do.
I was like, yeah. But so that's I guess, those are the heckles that she goes with,
Yeah.
and they're coming from a nice place. But you have to kind of also.
Well, it's
say,
nice that she comes to your show so often.
it's lovely. Yeah. This will be this weekend.
She's like, do you have any new material? Or
Yeah, she's over it. Yeah. It'll be like
this
the
dead
fourth
horse.
time. Yeah, that's right.
So when you get feedback on your show, do people generally talk about the comedy aspect, or do they remember the start and the end and they mention that?
Well, I've had a lot of people crying at the end of the show, coming up to me.
Not with
crying.
laughter.
Yeah, not with laughter. just like, people that have been really, I don't know, moved by the show.
Which is the point.
Which is a point. And so that's been the big thing, has been people who want to give me a hug or just talk to me about the show, and that's been the loveliest thing. But all the people that I have heard from have said it's a funny show, which was the point of the show. It's meant to be a funny show.
You're really doing it on hard mode, doing both of those things, though.
Yeah, it's a real pivot as well. Like, it's a hard thing to. It's a really big gear shift.
And to switch the vibe between the two.
Yeah,
as
it's a
well.
very hard thing to do and hopefully pull off every night. But people have been lovely about the show being funny, but mostly, I guess the main part has been people talking about how they didn't expect it.
I think the similarity, though, between those two, although they're on the opposite sides of the spectrum, is comedy is popular because it's raw and honest,
Yep.
and those two things both are, although one makes you cry for different reasons to the other
That's
one.
right. Yeah, they're very similar emotions. Like, they seem very close, and it's not until you actually try it that you're like, I wonder how much you can just go slightly to the right and see if people kind of go with you.
If you don't laugh, you cry.
That's right. Yeah.
So what was with the heart attack? Why did a young man of 20-something
26.
have a heart
Yeah.
attack?
I don't really know. I don't really know. I think I was really anxious. Like, I don't know exactly what happened. I was doing a gig that I was really nervous to do. This is a gig that was running in Melbourne for a very long time, and I'd done it a lot before. It's called Lucky Cock, and what it is, it's a venue called Lucky Cock, and they have $4 pizzas and drinks. It's a very cheap night for uni students to go to, and they wouldn't listen. They would never listen. So it was like, start at 9 o'clock, but there would be someone that would go up and just tap the microphone and go, comedy's about to start in 5 minutes. And no one wants to hear that. Surprise comedy's not for everyone. And also, like, if you're just having a $4 pizza and a drink, it's not what you want to hear. Surprise comedy's not for people that just want to get out and just want to have a talk with their friends, just catch up with their friends. And so this started, and people were not listening at all. And usually someone like Dave Hughes would drop in, and then everyone would listen for Dave Hughes, and as soon as you're off, you're just trying to convince people to stay. Which isn't a nice feeling.
Tough gig then.
Really tough gig, and it was famously tough. And I'd done it a lot, and it would either go really well or really bad, and there was no in between ever. And I'd seen my favourite comedians in the world bomb there. I think I saw a guy's last gig ever there who was a rising star. Like, he was meant to be the next big thing. And he went a bit wild on the night. He just started attacking the audience, and I never ever heard from him again. And he was huge. Like, he was going to be really, really, really big, and just never heard from him again. He had everything going for him, and and it was just a gig that wasn't because of that gig. There's obviously a lot else going on in someone's life. But then I went to do it that night, and I had people coming last minute. They messaged me, and people I really respected the opinion of, and they were coming along. And I never ever want anyone I know in the crowd. I'm just so, like, I love friends supporting me is so lovely, but I get way more nervous if there's someone I know in the crowd. And if someone tells me before the show that they're coming, I'm like, oh no, like I'm
coming on Saturday.
Yeah, I know you are. Yeah. But when you look, I don't know, there's something about just looking out. If I'm on stage, it's fine, and I see someone, I'm going, sure, and I won't look at them. But if I know the person's coming, I'm like, oh no, there's a bit more anxiety there. You're like, what if they hate it? What if their friends hate it?
Yeah, it feels like the stakes are higher.
The stakes are so high, and obviously when you start doing comedy, they're the only people that are coming anyway, like the people that know you. So it's like even harder to do comedy. And then these people were coming, and I was like, it made me my nerves just skyrocketed. And I used to write on my arm every night before I go out, it doesn't matter. And I didn't look at it that night. And now I have it tattooed on me. But I didn't look at it that night. And I remember just going, I walked on stage and I couldn't get my words out. Like, and then I got the first joke out and it went okay. Not great, it went okay. And then I started slurring my words a little bit and I didn't know what was happening. And I was talking about, I made a comparison between someone who thought that I had a stroke, and I started talking about that. And as I started talking about the stroke, I fell. And I was shaking. I was uncontrollably shaking, and my knees started to get really weak, and I just buckled and I fell, and then I just woke up. And people were just staring at me. Like it was like the most confused crowd of all time. Like they were just staring at me and I couldn't do anything. I was taken off stage at that point. Like someone just grabbed me.
So no one came to help?
A comedian did. Yeah, a comedian by the name of
The crowd was thinking like, fuck, he's really committed to this.
Yeah. And they didn't know if it was part of the act. Like, I was talking about a stroke. I don't know if people... There was a woman that did say that to me, you know, like, was this part of the act?
Coincidence.
Yeah. And it was because I think it probably looked like it was staged.
So did you go to hospital? Or?
Yeah, so the comedian Ryan came and got me off stage, got me to hospital, and I stayed in hospital overnight, and they said that I had a heart condition. And so then, you know, I was really scared for the night. Like I was really scared. I had a comedian friend that came and met me there and stayed with me that night. And I was just waiting for the results, and that makes you even more anxious, which isn't great when you've had a heart incident. People making you wait and going, we'll wait for the results to come through. But I was just so nervous, and then I wanted to get back up and I wanted to continue my gigs, but every single person that had gigs that I already booked were then like, oh, don't have a heart attack, which isn't something that is the best. It's
another show title.
Another show title. Don't have a heart attack. But it was just so annoying because it was like, oh, everyone was saying that, and I felt like Melbourne, the comedy world had kind of closed up, and I felt like my time in comedy was just over. Like I would never do anything again. And I came to the only person that would book me without asking those questions and without saying anything was Craig Egan, who runs the Rhino Room in Adelaide. And he said, absolutely, come on up. And so I did Adelaide comedy for 3 nights, I think. And I did the feature spot there and I did it for 3 nights. And then at the end of that, I went, I've done it. And I've made sure that the reason I quit was not because of me blacking out on stage. That wasn't my last gig. My last gig was, you know, a couple of weeks later in Adelaide in a really nice venue, and it was a great gig. And I said thank you to Craig, and then it's now been 6 years, and this is my first time coming back.
So why did you walk away from it?
Well, it was. I guess it was the heart, but it was also, I think my perception had changed of wanting to do it. I think after that I was so scared of doing it and I was terrified of it happening again, and I thought that wasn't fair to my family and it wasn't fair to my friends, that there would be this kind of weight over everyone kind of being like, oh, it might happen tonight, it might happen tonight, it might happen tonight. And so
kind of like when a surfer gets attacked by a shark.
That's right.
It could, an athlete gets an injury.
Yeah, I feel like it could have happened again at any point, and I felt like I needed to do it again. They were the scariest gigs I've ever done, those 3 gigs in Adelaide. But then once I had done that, I went, okay, well, you're only as good as your last gig is the thing that they always say in comedy. So I felt like that couldn't be my last gig. My last gig had to be a good one, and then I could walk away. And the plan was never to come back, and never do it again ever. And I certainly didn't think about it for nearly 6 years.
But here you are.
Yeah, that's right.
So why the comeback?
Well, I'd just been through a bad breakup, and I was like completely blindsided, didn't know what was happening, and one day she just moved out completely, and And I was suddenly just by myself in this house. I had my dog Missy Diggins, and I was just like, what do I do now with my life? Like I was kind of just at a point where I was like, I'm doing podcasts. I love the comedy part of that. I'd been doing the podcast live, and that was such a beautiful thing because people were coming and I had an audience and they were coming to see me, and so I didn't have to be the funniest person in the world, but I could get away with a lot less. Like you could get away with just a line here or there, or doing a kind of a funny intro, and those intros would just get longer and longer and longer. And I went, oh, there is something I'm missing. And I started to think a little bit more about why I wanted to do comedy in the first place. And little me would have wanted me to do a 1 hour show. Like little Sammy would have loved me to do a 1 hour show. And if I got years and years down the track and I didn't do it, I would have hated that.
Yeah, you can say, okay, little Sammy, well, whoopee cushion is 5 seconds. So.
Yeah, that's right. It's only a 5-second bit. But I went, okay, well, and each night at the back of the room, I imagine in the last bit that little me is there, like, just kind of watching and really proud, because that would be, I think, the dream to be in that, to watch that, I think, would be the dream to go, I did it. And so the goal was to just do it, which meant that I had to do 6 months of comedy gigs again. So I had to get up and I had to write an hour of comedy, and I had to get up and I had to do it 4 nights a week, and and that was a commitment that, like I said before, like wanting to cancel every night, that's not a great thing when you're suddenly booked 4 nights a week and you're doing gigs in random breweries, like, an hour outside of Melbourne, and you're doing...
Yeah, you gotta want it.
You gotta want it, and you gotta do everything, and you have to do every room, and you have to do... Like, a lot of people don't do that, and that's totally fine, but I'm not naturally a comedian. Like, I'm not naturally a comedian. Like, this is not my style. So I had to get up. I had to get up and try every single joke to see if it was funny. And that meant 6 months of... And then I had the first nights were booked, and they were selling, and so I had a certain amount of time, and I thought I would do the shows in each city apart from Adelaide. I would do each show, and that would be it. And I do it, in 2024, and at the end of 2024, I did it, and that would be it. But because the shows were well received, I was like, oh, I really like it. I really like being up there for an hour, which I didn't know that I would like. And it was just such a big test to go, well, if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, but at least I would have tried it. And I turned around after that, and late last year, you had to start applying for all the festivals, and I was like, okay, well, it's a massive financial undertaking for yourself, because I'm an independent person. I'm going to go to every festival, and I'm going to do a week, or I'm going to do 2 weeks, or I'm going to do 4 weeks, or whatever it is. I'm just going to go and do it. And I think once I made that decision, I was like, well, that means that's actually what I really want to do, and hopefully Mum won't come to every show. Yeah.
So juice is worth a squeeze.
That's right. Yeah. I think it is. Like, I mean, apart from me still having those nerves and wanting to cancel all the time, when I'm actually there, it's the best thing I could be doing. But it just takes a little bit to get there. And I think I'm getting better at, if I know I have a show booked, I know people are coming, great. Like that's a great thing.
It is the goal.
It is the goal. That is the goal.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't know. You're like, oh shit, like it might be a quiet night tonight. It might be and you just have to kind of go with it and really love the people that did come instead of the people that aren't there, which is, I think sometimes you can get hung up on, oh, it's there's 20 people here tonight, and and it would be great to have a full house every night, but then you're like, well, actually, like, the people that are here are really here to support you, and that's the loveliest thing.
And hence the tattoo.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Very cool. And presumably the heart condition under control now.
Yeah, so
or are you just Russian rouletting it?
Every night. No, so yeah, I went to a doctor and had a good chat with them, and I have had things here and there, like I've had a few heart murmurs and things, but it's not as bad as it was, and I certainly don't have the feeling that I'm ever going to black out on stage again. I don't have that feeling, and I have my Apple Watch, and I know what my heartbeat is, and I know that before a show I know where it's meant to be, and if it's there, it's great. And if it's not, then I can do some breathing exercises. But I haven't got to that point yet where I'm terrified of walking out and just collapsing again. I haven't had that just yet. So.
Oh, well, that's encouraging. Hopefully it won't be on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Because I'll be like, this is not part of the act.
It's not part of the act. Yeah, you can tell everybody, you can escort everybody out.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, don't give up on your dream, I suppose.
Thank you. Yeah. You know? I'll try not to. I've tried so far not to.
Well, now you're going around the country.
That's right. Yeah, I sort of can't give up on my dream right now.
You've got commitments to keep.
That's right. Yeah, well, 6 years away, like, it's a very long time away from the dream. So it's nice to kind of be back in there. And
enough time to be like, I don't have a plan B. So
I don't have a plan B. Yeah, which is terrifying, and probably the way that you need to do it to try and make it work.
It suits you well, man. And I'm looking forward to coming to watch your show on Saturday.
Yeah.
You've certainly had an interesting adventure so far.
Yeah.
And I love that you're blending the vulnerability with the comedy, and I think those things have a nice synchronicity, and people like to come and see something a bit different too.
Yeah.
Because we're coming to laugh, but we're also coming to feel something and relate to someone, and talking about the kind of things that you talk about. We all have our own experiences with those. So credit to you for having the balls to get up on stage anyway, especially after having a heart attack and with the palsy, and then talking about the deepest, darkest things. There's a lot of balls going on in that scenario, so credit to you for that, man.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Yeah, it's just I think just doing it is the main thing, and then whatever happens is the gravy on top, hopefully.
And it doesn't matter because we're all going to die anyway.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Youngblood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Youngblood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Youngblood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.